Hello everyone and welcome back to the CDL podcast channel. In this little video today, I'm going to be doing my preseason power rankings for the 2020-2021 CDL season. Before we get into everything, obviously there's been a little bit of an absence again. I apologize for that. I've been super busy with school and stuff. Had to finish up finals. That was kind of brutal going into my last semester here. And a little bit after this little bit of a winter break, but things are kind of ramping up for the CDL. I thought we were going to start in late January, but I'm hearing we may start now in early February or mid-February, which kind of stinks, but either way, we'll be excited whenever that season rolls around. But I wanted to get a video out here doing my preseason power rankings, kind of now that all the rosters are officially out and we have an actual roster on paper. We don't have a lot of footage or scrim footage or anything for most of the teams, but we've at least got a roster on paper that we can rank in a way, and we'll probably rank it completely wrong. We'll probably put somebody at like 9 that ends up being the best team or something. That seems to be how it always goes, but we're going to kind of throw them into tiers here. I'm actually going to change this one tier to D tier. I see down here it said unknown. I did not want that on there. We're not going to do a trash tier because I actually don't think there's any trash teams this year. But before we get into all that, like I said, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe on this video, your tier list and stuff, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Other than that, I'm thinking about starting, I saw like the CDL Intel page posted a thing about starting a fantasy league, and I honestly just kind of didn't even think about draft up at all this year. I did it a couple times with some of my friends last year. But if you guys would be interested in getting in a league, comment down below. Just say like, hey, I'm interested, here's my Twitter or something, and then either drop a follow on my Twitter here for this channel, and then I'll follow you back and DM you or something, details for the league, and hoping we can get like 6, maybe 8, maybe 10 people. I know I've got a couple people that are interested that would join it. But yeah, so comment down below if you're interested in joining a draft buff fantasy COD league. I think that'd be kind of fun to do with some of you guys because, I don't know, who knows, it's kind of, fantasy COD's kind of a crapshoot because you have no idea who might be good in each game, but that's kind of the fun of it. But without further ado, we'll get into the video here a little bit. Gonna rank them. Like I said, this is preseason power rankings. This may completely change. It may be completely wrong, but just based on the roster on paper, this is how I think things are gonna shake out this season. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean like if I say let's say I put like Seattle at 6th place in my power rankings. That doesn't mean I exactly think Seattle's gonna finish at 6th. In champs this year, and if I put somebody at 9, that doesn't mean I think they're going to miss champs. That's just where I'm ranking them right now, and I think especially the higher they get, the higher their ceiling is, in my opinion. So maybe they could have a couple good events, and if my 9 team is consistently at 9 and not wavering at all, and they never have a really good event, never have a really bad event, they might miss the playoffs. But if my 8 team goes from 1st to 12th to 12th to 3rd, they may miss the playoffs despite being one ahead of my 9 team just because they're not as consistent. But anyways, enough of that. We'll just show you how I'm ranking them. The tiers are split up, obviously S, A, B, C, D. The lower it gets, the worse you are. I'm going to go from worst to first, I think, and I'll kind of explain the gap in the tiers as I go. So the first team we're putting on here is LAG. I don't think that's much of a shock. The roster is Assault, Silly, Apathy, and Vivid. The reason I'm putting them in the D tier, and once again, I think last year when I did something like this, I had a trash tier. But I'm not going to have a trash tier this year because I actually think with the switch to 4v4 and no expansion teams, a lot of the extra players in the league got cut out, and some players that definitely deserve to be in the league got cut out. But this made the teams a lot better overall, and I'm actually shocked they didn't put Paris last, but they finally announced their roster, and it's not the worst thing ever. But to me, LAG's roster just doesn't have a lot of potential. They got Assault on the main. I believe Silly will probably be their flex, and he's normally more of a sub, and then they got Apathy and Vivid on the subs. But like I said, I mean, Apathy, Silly, and Assault won a world championship together in World War II, not that long ago, actually. But when you look at the roster, it's like Assault's a solid main AR, and Silly's a pretty good flex. Apathy can be a superstar in the right game, but it's been a few years since he has been. And Vivid looked pretty good last year, but nothing amazing. So it's like, I could see them winning matches. I don't think they're just going to get stomped all around. But I don't see them doing much more than maybe making a couple runs to some semifinals or something. I don't see them winning an event. I don't think they have the potential to do that. But I do think they have potential to cause some upsets and maybe like sneak into the top 8 for champs or something. But to me, they just don't have much of a high ceiling, so they got to be in the D tier. Actually, I think I'm going to leave LAG as the only team in my D tier. I think we're going to move on, and we're going to put Paris in the C tier as like and I'm going to put like So LAG is the 12th team, Paris is the 11th team, then whoever I put at 10, I'm going to just put them ahead of them on the list. So we're going bottom to top. So Paris is like my 11th ranked team, and I'm putting them in the C tier. Their roster was just recently announced. I believe is the last one to be announced. It is Aqua on the main. I think Scraps will probably be the flex, and then Classic and Fire will be subs. The roster's actually a little better than I thought it was. I thought they'd pick up 4 people we'd never even heard of just to save money. From the sounds, is they just wanted to pay a bunch of minimum contracts, which kind of sucks. But I guess it's what they wanted to do. But I mean, Aqua is their main. He's shown at times, especially like in BO3 when he had that team with Fellow and Facento and Naga. None of them were really big slayers, and Aqua would drop like 50 every respawn, or every hardpoint, I should say, for them to have a chance to win in Black Ops 3. So, I mean, dude has shown in the past he can have some crazy potential. Then I think either Scraps or Classic, one of the two will be the flex. Scraps, obviously, super high potential player. He can take over maps. He's an extremely good main slayer when he needs to be. And then you've got Classic, another really good player. Not like a superstar, but a guy who consistently seems to win an event every year and plays pretty high. And then Fire is kind of the unknown here. He teamed with Parasite for, pretty much most of what I know him from Modern Warfare. I didn't really know anything of him before Modern Warfare. I think he might have just turned 18 during the season. And he teamed a lot with Parasite, and he was absolutely incredible from the sounds of it. I didn't get to watch too much of his gameplay, and then I heard Nameless on the Codcast saying he played with him a little bit in like some respawn 8s, and apparently the kid's incredible. So if he actually is as incredible as people are saying he is, this prediction of putting Paris at 11 might look kind of stupid in a few weeks when the season starts, because maybe they're actually going to be really good. But to me, putting them in the C tier, it's actually a pretty big leap above LAG. I actually think like Aqua has potential to be a top 6 main AR. I think Scraps could be a top player. I think Classic is one of the most consistently good players that does everything you need to do to win. And then if Fire's as good as everybody says he is, I think this team has potential to sneak into champs, and I think they have potential to be like a top 6 team at certain events. I think the outlook for Paris is they greatly improved over last year, which is kind of surprising. I didn't expect it. And then the next team on the list, this one pains me. You guys know I really like Methods, but we're going to throw Toronto Ultra in the 10 spot above Paris. They got Methods, Cammy, Kleenex, and Bance. See, to me, I think I would have slotted this team a couple spots higher if they had kept Classic instead of Bance. Nothing against Bance. I do think he is a good player, but I just think Classic is a little bit more complete and rounded out their team better because he's more willing to do the dirty work, where with Classic doing all the dirty work, Kleenex can fly around and slay, and so can Cammy, and then Methods can just do his job as the main like he always does. But once again, like I said, this team getting put in the 10 spot in the C tier isn't really that much of a knock on them, to be honest, because the league is so stacked. I just see them as a team with a little bit lower of a ceiling. I think, like I said, Methods, very solid, stable main AR. Cammy has superstar potential. He showed it last year. Kleenex also superstar potential, showed it last year. But I think what lowers their ceiling is Bance. He's a solid player, but honestly, we haven't seen Bance in that peak Bance form. And like BO3, he was incredible. He was one of the best players in the world, despite being Europe, North America, Australia, whatever you want to say. Bance was a top player in BO3. And I just honestly haven't seen much of that from him in the last how many years. And now we're on the second Black Ops game since BO3, and he just seems like he's a pretty good player, but I think he lowers the ceiling of them a little bit. Once again, this is another team I could see cracking some top 6s, and just like Paris, I could see them even being like a super dark horse to win an event, maybe one of the 5 majors. I wouldn't say it's likely. I kind of put LAG as having almost no chance to do that, I don't think, unless they make a roster change. And then in that C tier, it's kind of like I think Paris and Ultra are like potential dark horses to win an event. Starting a new tier here. In the 9 spot, this one pains me as well. I'm going to put Seattle Surge in the B tier. So now the B tier is more of teams like, these are teams that I think have potential to win an event, more than just a dark horse. I think like they could steal an event, but other than that, I think they're going to be like kind of top 8 consistent teams around that area. I think these are like teams that are going to consistently be in like the winner's bracket when the new format where we have 8 teams in the winner's bracket at the majors and then 4 teams starting the losers. These are kind of the teams. There's 9 teams in B and above that I think are always going to be in the top 8 pretty much. Obviously, since I have 9, one of them has to be left out, but I think they'll all kind of be battling for that position. So the Surge roster, I think it's a great improvement over last year. They have Octane, Gunless, Looney, and Prestinni. So now talent-wise, I mean, Octane, you can argue he's the best AR. Gunless, you can argue he's the best flex. Looney is an extremely good leader and an IGL in-game leader, which is important, as we learned last year, to have on a team, especially looking at that Dallas versus Atlanta champs final. And then they have Prestinni kind of as the guy that they're going to have be their main slayer on the sub, I think. So yeah, that's where the issue lies with me. First of all, Gunless and Looney, they said they love teaming together, but they can be a little toxic at times, and I don't know if that'll be a great environment for Octane, because he had said just as early as last year that he doesn't want to team with Gunless, and then kind of with the way the year went, he's like, you know what, screw it, my year went so bad last year, I'm just going to take on a guy with a talent like Gunless and see if I can deal with his attitude and stuff. But I could see this team imploding because Prestinni has had kind of a hothead at times in the past and kind of can struggle with, the mental aspect of the game. Sometimes he can kind of get off track. Gunless the same way, can be kind of toxic. Looney, I think, can be toxic. And Octane, I don't really know if we've ever seen that from him, but if he gets put in a really toxic environment, he may become toxic himself. So that's like to me, the thing, this team could implode. But also, once again, if they don't implode and they work together well, Octane could be the best player in the world. Gunless could be the best player in the game, best flex. Looney is a great leader, and Prestinni can be really good at times if he's clicking. The problem I see with this team is inconsistencies. Like I said, Gunless's attitude could get in the way. Looney's a pretty consistent player. I don't have too many concerns about his consistency. Prestinni is a very inconsistent player. He could be the best player on the map in certain days and the absolute worst on other days. And Octane also pretty consistent. But I think the issue is, I believe they're going to leave Gunless on the flex and then have Looney and Prestinni on the subs. And I just think that when they run into teams like with Simp and Abezy, or Huke and shottzyy, or Scump and Envoy, or Kenny and TJ, Attach and Priesta, all these kind of teams, I just don't know that Looney and Prestinni can keep up with slaying, and that little bit of an edge might kind of put them below. But like I said, I think they're a team that has a somewhat decent chance to win an event at some point this year. They're going to be in contention, I believe, but they're more towards the bottom half of that top 8. All right, this is going to make all you EU fans mad, but I'm going to put London, slot them in the 9 spot ahead of the Surge once again. I'm sorry, in the 8 spot ahead of the Surge. Once again, London, another team that I think is so good, but the league is just so stacked this year. They've got 0 on the main, and if you know anything, if you've listened to this channel, this podcast, this show, whatever you want to call it for a while, you know that I'm a huge 0 fan. I think he's my favorite European player. I really like Kleenex and Cammy a lot too. But I love 0. I think it's a shame that he hasn't been able to play the main AR for how many of the past years he's been kind of stuck teaming with like Rated, and then other guys who want to run the main, and he just was unable to. He adapted. He played like last year on the subliners in the beginning of the year. He was forced to play. I mean, who was their main? Accuracy, and 0 was forced to play a sub role. And honestly, 0 in a sub role, he's still pretty good, but it's just not what he's meant to play. He's more of a main AR. And then last year he was playing with Wuskin, and he still wasn't really able to play the main because obviously Wuskin was just killing it as a main AR, one of the best players in the league. But now 0 finally gets a chance to be a main, and I'm so excited. Then they have Shawnee, a consistent player on the flex, and then Alex and Dylan. So once again, this team is another team that I think they're going to consistently be a top 8 team, maybe more towards the bottom half, but they also have decent potential to be contending for events and maybe win an event. So like I said, I'm putting them at 8, but I do think they're a really good team, so don't get mad at me. But 0, like I said, I think he has superstar potential. Shawnee is a consistent player. I don't really think he has superstar potential, but I also don't think he's going to be a guy that absolutely causes you to lose because he's just so consistent. He's always going to be around a 0.9 in his KD. He's going to do all the right stuff on the map, and he's just a perfect flex, so I don't have too much concerns about him. And then Alex, super good player last year. He was super good in BO4. Just another really good player. I'm very confident he'll be able to keep up with any subs. And then Dylan is the big question mark in this team for me. In BO4, if you look at Dylan, you could argue he was the best player in the game at times, the best sub in the game. And then in Modern Warfare, he was pretty lackluster, to be honest. So to me, this is where the X factor in this team is. I think 0 is going to be good. I think Shawnee's going to be good. I think Alex is going to be good. It's, do we get BO4 Dylan or Modern Warfare Dylan? If we get Modern Warfare Dylan, I think the Royal Ravens will be kind of a middle-of-the-pack team again, maybe around top 6. They'll have a chance to maybe make a run to a final sometime. They'll be at champs. They'll maybe make another run. But they won't be able to do anything crazy. If we have BO4 Dylan, this team could skyrocket all the way up to the top 4 and be consistently competing for events. It's just a matter of what Dylan we get to me. And then next in this tier, we're going to go with Florida. They are at 7. Then another really good team. Once again, in any other year, they might be a top 4 team. They got Skies in the main, great player. I think they'll have Awakening on the flex probably, and then Slacked and Havoc on the subs. Once again, the reason this team slots in at 7, they've been playing super well early on in like tournaments and stuff. Really good in search. Obviously, unfortunately, Fero was supposed to be on this team instead of Slacked. Obviously, some horrible circumstances occurred. Fero passed away just a few months ago. So obviously, RIP Fero. Really sucks we're not going to be able to see him, not only for COD, just, I mean, he was a pretty cool personality. I always really liked following him. I got a chance to meet him at the Minnesota event when he was competing. I believe he was competing with Parasite in that event. He was still in the amateur scene at the time. He hadn't been picked up with Florida. Just a super cool guy, super humble. He was really nice when I met him. And sometimes when you're like a fan of somebody, you meet him, they don't always come off as the nicest person, but he really did. So really going to miss watching him compete and just, watching his journey. But they pick up Slack to replace him. Slack, a great player, obviously. This team slots in at 7, and once again, another team I think could potentially win events. It's going to be a competitive team, but the reason they don't slot in higher and they're in the B tier is I think Skies is a very good player. He's not going to hold them back. I think Awakening is super good. I'm really excited to see his development in more of a regular COD, see how he looks. But Havoc and Slacked on the subs, once again, kind of like the Prestinni Looney duo. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're both really good players, but when it comes down to the big moments, and they're playing Abezy and Simp and Huke and shottzyy and Scump and Envoy, Kenny TJ, those big four, Priest Attach, all them that we're thinking of. I feel like just Havoc and Slacked, they're very smart players, very good players, but I think they might get overwhelmed with like Simp and Abezy, Huke and shottzyy. So that's why they slot in here. But another team that has potential to take an event this year. Slotting in at number 6, going to be my last team in the B tier, New York. So another really interesting team. I kind of wanted to slot them towards the end of the A tier, but the reason I don't is because of roster question marks. Excuse me. I think, let's see, we got Clay on the main AR here, that's for sure. Then I believe Mac will probably be the flex. And then Zuma will be a sub. But the issue is Hydra and Asim. It seems like Hydra was supposed to be the starter when they first picked him up because Clay was super high on him. He's a French kid. I think he just recently turned 18 or 19. Like last year he competed for a little bit. Apparently he was an absolute monster. I'll be honest, I didn't follow the European amateur scene too well, so my knowledge might not be great on him, but I know he's supposed to be a monster, and pretty much every pro thinks so. And usually when every pro thinks somebody's going to be a monster, they probably are. He'll at least be a good player, but I think he had some visa issues, and with COVID and everything, I think he was living in France, but had a little bit of trouble like moving over to the US and stuff. So I don't know if they got that all sorted out. But I think he might be here now. I'm not really 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But since he was over in France, or I don't know where he was, somewhere in Europe, I think it was France, he obviously couldn't really practice with the team because the internet connection from France to the United States was so bad. So they've been practicing with Asim a lot. And if you know anything about Asim, however you want to say it, Asim's a really good player. He's kind of like, I always call him kind of like the poor man's Abezy in a way, and that's not a knock on him. If you're even ever compared to Abezy, that's pretty good, because if you know my thoughts on Abezy, I think he might be the best player in the world. So Asim is a super good player. He's so aggressive. He makes, I think, personally, he's like one of the people I'd like to team with the most if I was at the level of being a pro, because like if you're a flex, Asim just opens up the map so much for you. He's just like, he plays so fast. He's willing to just throw his life away in order for you to get the kill and move up the map. So he's just a super good player to play with. I'm thinking they might start out the season with Hydra though, and see how it goes. And if the language barrier is too much and he just hasn't caught up, just because due to lack of practice or whatever, they'll switch to Asim. But Clay on the main AR, obviously, he's a back-to-back world champion with 2 different teams. You know he's going to get it done. Mac looks super good last year. Zuma's always good. Then I think it just comes down to the development of Hydra. If he ends up being a super good player, they're going to move up to the A tier easily. If not, they'll stick in the B tier. But once again, another team definitely could win an event, maybe even 2. That's why they're towards the upper echelon of my B tier, but a good team nonetheless. All right, now we're going to get into the A tier. Now I think I figure you guys probably all expected Atlanta, Dallas, LA Thieves, and then Optic to be somewhere in A and S, kind of as the top 4, but I don't know if you expected Minnesota to be 5. They're going to slot in my A tier. In the 5 spot. They're kind of my dark horse team this year. You know, I kind of have a soft spot. I'm from Wisconsin, you know, from the Midwest. Kind of have a soft spot for Minnesota. Our neighbors, we don't have a team in Wisconsin. Hopefully we get one, maybe Milwaukee or something. But Minnesota has a roster of Accuracy in the AR. Major Maniac, I think, will probably be the flex. And then Priesta and Attach on the subs. So this roster is full of stars, obviously. I mean, Attach and Priesta have been stars for most of their career. Major Maniac kind of blossomed into a star on Gen G in BO4, and then continued it up last year with Faze. And then Accuracy has been kind of like a staple main AR, really kind of got his chops. He's been playing forever, but he kind of really got his publicity to more of the community in World War II with TK. But the reason this team slots in is A, and also A tier to me is like teams that are consistently going to be competing for event wins. They're going to be top 6 pretty much the whole year. Maybe they might bounce down to top 8 some events and struggle, but they're going to be pretty consistently towards the top, and they definitely are event contenders, no doubt in my mind. That's this team. So accuracy, he might probably never be like a top 4 AR, but he's always going to be top 6, and he can compete with those top ARs, and he's going to go off some games and just take over. Then Major Maniac, same thing. I think he actually fits in the flex role more naturally. He was playing the main last year for Atlanta, but that was because everybody else they had in their team is so fast. But I think he fits more naturally in the flex. That's more of what he played in BO4 with the Maddox, and I think allowing him to play a little faster and kind of slaying out the map kind of got him more in a rhythm, because half the time his teammates would be slaying so much last year in Atlanta. You'd go to the end of the game and he'd be like 11-7 in a 250 to 200 game, and it'd be like, what the heck is he doing? But he's just holding spawns all the time, and his teammates are getting so many kills, but he has more chance to get kills. So I'm super excited to see an improvement from Major Maniac this year. Then we got Priest on Attach. So now this is the one thing I'm a little bit questioning with this roster. Attach is, he's a really good sub, all that, but he's never really been the main sub, in my opinion. It's usually been Tommy Zuma, who's been teamed with for ages. Tommy's kind of always been the entry guy, picking up the kills, then Attach kind of follows up, finishes off, gets his trade. But he's never really been the entry guy, and I don't know if he's going to be the entry guy again. It might be Priesta, but same thing. Priesta's never really been a main sub either. Enable is kind of the main sub, sliding in first on 100 Thieves with him. Same thing. Zuma did it in front of him in like World War II when he really came onto the scene. But I think Priesta can easily excel in that role, so I think if Priesta becomes the entry, Attach is the follow-up sub, Major Maniac slaying as the flex, and then you've got Accuracy as a steady main AR. This team has so much potential. The reason they slot in at 5 and not higher for me is because of that role issue potential. Major Maniac was a main AR last year. Accuracy's obviously only ever really been a main AR, and then Priest and Attach neither have really ever been main subs, so I think maybe they might struggle with roles a little bit, which is the only reason they're in 5, but I think they're going to be a consistent event contender. All right. Now to the top 4. Are they all going to be in S tier? They're not. I'm going to put LA Thieves next. I think LA Thieves are going to slot in at 4. They are definitely in the A tier. Kind of when going through how I wanted to rank everybody, I actually thought about putting them in S tier. I thought about saying screw it, making a bold prediction and putting them 1, but I don't think it's fair to do that just yet. Their roster consists of Slasher on the main. I probably think Temp will be the flex, and then Kenny and TJ on subs. So this roster is nasty talent-wise. Slasher, consistent top AR. Temp, if he gets on the right game, especially in like BO4, he was insane. Last year he was good, but he was insane at BO4. Very, very good player. Kenny, you know what I think about Kenny. I think Kenny, once again, is one of those players that I think might be the best in the world. And then TJ, when he can turn it on, if he's not super inconsistent, can be an insane player. So the reason that they rank in 4 and not higher, Slasher isn't the reason. I think Slasher's super consistent, but the Slasher-Temp relationship has blown up one team before in World War II. Envy couldn't get a good placement. The relationship between Slasher and Temp was awful. So for a couple reasons, this team slots in at 4. I still think they have a chance to be a competitor at every event. I think they could win multiple events, and they're going to be competing all the time. I still wish they would have got Karma at the flex instead of Temp, but obviously Karma didn't want to play. But Slasher and Temp's relationship could be one reason either that they blow up and don't end up fulfilling this top 4 kind of role, but also I think TJ is the other reason. So I think that Slasher's going to be really good and consistent. I think as long as Temp's attitude's in place and he's meshing with the team well, he's going to be really consistent and very good. And I think Kenny is probably like a top 5 player in the world, so I think Kenny's going to be just fine. The issue is TJ. So TJ, at times, like I remember in World War II Champs when he dropped like 60 on London Docks hardpoint for the loss, he can be nuts. He can be so good. But then there's also the TJ that shows up randomly, like when he was on Optic. Like, he just lays a complete dud. And to me, I don't think Simp and Abezy are really ever laying duds. I don't think Huke and shottzyy are ever laying duds. And I don't really think Scump and Envoy are ever laying duds. So the duo of Kenny and TJ, I think TJ might lay just a little bit more duds. He's more prone to the bad game than any of those other top 3 teams have in their subs. And then I think the attitude issues from Temp and Slasher kind of bumping heads. I don't see that happening between like many of the other players in the other teams. Like I don't really think Dallas has many bumping heads issues. I don't think Atlanta does. Optic might a little bit, but I think once again the inconsistency of TJ bumps Optic above them a little bit. But yeah, I think LA Thieves, crazy talent, could be the best team in the world. are going to compete at every event they're in. I just could see their team having kind of attitude issues and maybe a little bit of inconsistencies from TJ. Once again, you have to pick out little things when you're at this top level with all these great teams. So the next team in our A tier, putting them at third in the power rankings for the preseason, is Optic Chicago. You know, some of you guys might be upset because I'm sure there's a lot of the listeners here are probably Optic fans because, let's face it, a majority of the scene's Optic fans. But I'm not saying Optic's bad. I think, once again, I'm putting them above LA Thieves, so I said could be the best team in the game. I think Optic has the potential to be the best team in the game. Their roster obviously is Formal on the AR, Dashy on the flex, and then Scump and Envoy on the subs. This roster has potential to very easily be, I would not be shocked if we come to the end of the year and they've won 3 events and they win champs. I wouldn't be shocked at all. They could very easily be the best team in the world. The only issue I see is a role issue. So I think Formal, obviously, great main AR. Dashy, also great main AR. And last year, Dashy was super upset on Optic, and he didn't bench himself. He was benched because they say that he really wanted to play the main, but Slasher was the main, and there's attitude issues, role issues. But for some reason, I really think Dashy turned that around. I think he talked with Hecz. I think they kind of had a talk like, you know, this stuff's not going to fly. Formal is the main AR. You're going to have to take on the flex role if you want to play with us. Scump obviously wanted to team with him again. Dashy's a disgusting player. He's amazing talent. Obviously, I don't know who wouldn't want to team with him. But once again, like I said, you have to nitpick little things when you're separating 3 amazing teams. You have to nitpick little things that you think might be just like a little bit of a hole in the armor and then drop them down. So that's why Chicago fits at 3. Just at the top of the A tier. I want to put them in S, but I feel like Atlanta and Dallas, you know, are kind of in a tier of our own until proven otherwise. But once again, this team, amazing team. I think that I picked the duos of Simp and Abezy and Huke and shottzyy for subs just a little bit above Scump and Envoy, but it's very close. It's not like the other sub duos where I think there's a decent gap between Dallas and Atlanta sub duos and the other ones. I think Chicago is right there with them. To me, the way that Chicago is able to jump the other teams, I think between Arcitys, Crimsix, and Formal, they're kind of going to wash each other out as great ARs. And then I think even the sub duos are kind of going to wash each other out. But I think the way that Chicago is able to jump ahead of Dallas and Atlanta is if Scump has one of his best years and is a great sub this year. I think Envoy is going to be amazing either way, but Scump can be a little inconsistent as he's gotten older. Obviously, he's still amazing pretty much every game he plays. But if Scump can push to that like old Scump level, like BO3 Scump level, and just get a little bit extra, he could push their sub duo over the top. And then if Dashy can outplay Illey and Celium in the flex, they could propel themselves above the other teams. But they're going to be a consistent event contender, so Optic fans, don't worry. They're going to have a chance to win every event they're at. They're a super, super good team. All right, down to the final 2. They're both going in S tier, as I said. Which one's going to go first, though? Defending champs, Dallas Empire. I'm putting them at 2. So the reason I put them at 2 is just comes down to the talent thing. I think last year I overrated Atlanta's talent too much and didn't take into account that Dallas was just a smarter, more prepared team, especially when it came to the finals of champs. But when you look at the team now, Dallas, their talent is insane. Crim on the main AR, I mean, what can you say? Crim's a 3-time world champion. He's the greatest player of all time. It's really no debate anymore. Nothing wrong to say with him, really. Illey on the flex, I believe, and I'm really excited to see how that happens. And then Huke and shottzyy, possibly the best sub duo in the league. You could easily put this team at 1. I would definitely say you're not wrong if you put them at 1. I'm just going to put them at 2 from the simple talent standpoint. I think the thing that separated Dallas above Atlanta when it came down to champs, like I said, was preparation and just in-game leader. They had Clay and Crim who could kind of direct the troops and stuff. And Atlanta really had nobody like that, but now they do in Arcitys. Like I said, you got to find somewhere to pick a hole in the armor. The only thing I can think of really with this team, I think Illey might be the best flex in the world this year. I think I'm super excited to watch his development. I think along with like Dashy and Celium and maybe like Mac, maybe Major Maniac Temp, kind of those guys, even Cammy. I think he could be the best flex in the world, kind of competing with all those guys. There's so many good ones. But I think we're going to see Illey be amazing. Huke, I love Huke. He's going to be amazing. shottzyy, reigning MVP, I think he's going to be amazing. The thing is, I think Crim is a better flex than he is a main AR. Once again, Crim's the best player to ever live in Call of Duty. So I'm not criticizing him at all, but I think Clay is a better main AR than Crim. Crim is a better player than Clay, but I think Crim is a better flex. He's better at the flex role. I don't think he thrives as much in a main. We saw him struggle a little bit in BO4. He was still really good, but he wasn't like a top-level AR in BO4. So I think That's the one thing that separates them. Is Crim isn't like, I think Crim's just a more natural flex. I still think he's probably going to be a top 4 AR in the game because it's just Crim. He's always the top at whatever he does, but that's why I got to slot him in S. But obviously in the S tier, I think they're going to be possibly top 2 at every single event. I think they'll be at the end in champs. I'm fairly confident. I'm very confident to say that Dallas will most likely, unless some crazy unforeseen circumstance happens, be top 4 at champs. Same with my number 1 team here, Atlanta. We'll throw them up there so we can wrap up this video. I rambled a lot. This video went pretty long, but hey, it's content. We haven't put out any in a while due to being busy with school, but I'm finally excited to maybe get back into the swing of things here as the season rolls along. And Atlanta here is number 1. They got Arcitys on the main AR, Cellium on the flex, and then the duo, Simp and Abezy, the Tiny Terrors, on the subs. So I think this is the best sub duo in the league, Simp and Abezy. Close second probably is Huke and shottzyy. I think Arcitys is probably a top 3, top 4 main AR, along with like Slasher, Formal, probably like Clay, maybe Crim, maybe even throw Skies in there. God, there's so many good players in the league. I think Cellium has potential, once again, like I said, with Illey and Dashy, to be the best flex. And personally, I think Simp obviously could be easily the best player in the world and stuff. And everybody likes to say that, but I honestly think Abezy might be the best Call of Duty player in the world just because he does all the dirty work and still puts up 1.2, 1.3s. Simp is just insane, but Abezy's the one doing all the dirty work, so I kind of just appreciate that. But I just don't see a hole in this team. The whole of Atlanta last year, like I spoke about a little bit when talking about Dallas, was the fact that they just simply didn't have a leader in-game when things got chaotic. They didn't have somebody that could slow it down and say, hey, guys, this is what we're going to do, and he's going to direct the troops. Now they have that. From what I've heard, Arcitys is a very good very good IGL in-game leader. We obviously know he's a great main. But from what I've heard, Arcitys is a very, very good in-game leader. So I think that brings a new element to this team. Then Cellium, obviously disgusting. Simp and Abezy, good luck keeping up with them. And Arcitys is not only just a good communicator and good leader, but he is an absolutely crazy skilled AR. Potentially the most skilled AR in the league. You never know. Along with, I forgot Octane in there. Along with like Octane, Slasher, Formal, Crim, all those guys, Clay. Arcitys might be the most skilled one. So just honestly, I think talent-wise, they're the most talented team, and now they've got their leader. All right. So that's going to do it here for our power rankings. The video went very long. But number 12, I'm sorry. In the D tier, we've got LAG, C tier at 11, Paris, and 10, Ultra. B tier, 9, Surge. 8, Royal Ravens, 7, Mutineers, and 6, Subliners. And then in the A tier at 5, we've got Rocker, 4, LA Thieves, 3, Optic Chicago. And then in the S tier at 2, we've got Dallas Empire, and 1, Atlanta Faze. Like I said, though, I think this year is going to be super, super competitive. I think that LA Gorillas has a chance to crack some top 4s if some crazy things happen because they're not the worst team in the world. They're way better than the worst team last year being like Paris or Seattle or something. I think they're way better than that. I'm interested to see how roster changes might go because I do think we've got a couple teams, maybe like Seattle or like maybe Florida or maybe even LA Thieves that could kind of implode on themselves. And obviously with New York, we got the whole situation between who's going to play, Hydra or Sim. So a lot of roster changes could go down. Who knows? This prediction could be completely wrong. Who knows? Maybe Paris is going to be the best team in the world. Maybe Fire is the next Simp or something. I don't know. But that's going to do it. Like I said, comment down below if you're interested in a Draft Buff Fantasy League. Just like drop your Twitter or something. Go follow CDL Podcast on Twitter, my Twitter channel, or my Twitter handle for this channel. I'll link it in the description. Just shoot me a follow. I'll probably follow you back or something so I can DM you and maybe give you some details on a league. If we can get like 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, people, probably start it up and run one for the year and see what we can do. Probably just for fun, no money involved or anything. Just a fun league, fantasy COD, and just kind of see how it goes, and maybe we can make it a yearly thing with whoever starts to join. So yeah, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Comment down how your tier goes. If you don't want to go in super detail about it, just comment 1 through 12, how you're ranking the teams. See if we have somebody that's ranking Minnesota at 1 or something, some crazy predictions. Does somebody think Optic's going to be 8? I've seen some crazy things from some people putting Optic like lower than 6 and stuff, which would be controversial for the community. But yeah, that's going to do it. This has been Ryan with the CDL Podcast channel. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for the lack of content, like I said. I've just been so busy, but I've missed kind of making these videos after I kind of shook off the early nerves. I feel like I got into the video more and I was right back at home, but I really enjoyed doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop those comments down below. I'm excited to read them. This has been Ryan with the CDL Podcast, like I said, and I will see you later. Have a great day, everyone.